So new for 2019, QuickBooks Online has added the ability to track labor or payroll cost into the project cost. This is brand new for March of 2019. Before that feature wasn't available. So let me tell you how that works. You're going to go into the projects tab on the left-hand side of the screen. Then you're going to see all your active projects. Then on the middle of the screen, you're going to see total income and total costs. Those costs include bills, checks, credit card charges that have been charged to the job itself. If I click on any of those specifically, it's going to take me to a project's detail screen. And you're going to notice that the costs are split between cost of goods sold and expenses. So for example, you see all the materials, you see all the expenses like contractors, and then you see payroll expenses. Before we get into payroll expenses, for some additional context, I'm going to go ahead and click on this total materials expense here and go into a report that shows me all the transactions related to this. So I'm going to click on this particular transaction here. I'll click on that and notice that there's a bill, there's the category materials, and there's a project selected. And that in essence is job costing. So in QuickBooks Online, when you're talking about job costing, if anybody tells you about job costing and you're not sure what they're talking about, simply all they're saying is that you're able to select the customer or project related to that expense. Now, the caveat is that you have to be using QuickBooks Online Plus, which is about $60 a month, or QuickBooks Online Advanced, which is about $150 a month. If you're working on QuickBooks Online Self-Employed, Simple Start, or Essentials, which are the more basic versions under $40 a month, you're not going to have the ability to do job costing of any sort. Now, if you do happen to have those features or those versions of QuickBooks and you don't see that column there that says customer project, all you have to do is click on the gear menu on the top right of the screen, go into account and settings, and then you're going to go into expenses. You click on the expenses tab, and then you're going to click on bills and expenses. And you will notice that there's a little checkbox that says track expenses and items by customer. So as long as you have this option here and then it's turned under on, you're going to be able to do job costing. Also under sales and under, actually not under sales, under advanced, we're going to click on advanced. And then there's going to be an option that says projects, and it says organize all job related activities into one place. We have to click on that checkbox where it says projects and click on save. So as long as, again, if you're using QuickBooks Online Plus or QuickBooks Online Advanced and you have projects turned on and you have track expenses or items by customers, this feature is going to work. Anyway, let's go back to it. Let's go back to projects again one more time. And we're going to click on that project and get into the project's detail screen. And then we're going to notice that payroll expenses is right there, right? So I'm going to click on that little triangle to expand. And notice it's split by wages and taxes. And yes, if you actually run payroll inside QuickBooks and you have allocated the hours before you process that payroll into the jobs, you're going to see the actual raw wages and taxes allocated to the job. So I'm going to go ahead and click on any of those buttons there so you can see. And this information is actually coming from a payroll check. So that's a really important part here. Now, let me show you an example real quick. So I'm going to go into projects and I'm going to click on new project. So I'm going to create a brand new project here by clicking on new project. And we're going to call it new attic, right? So let's say we're building a new attic for someone. And then for the customer, we're going to choose this customer called Laurel customer. So that's it. We got the new attic. Spell that correctly. So I got the new attic, Laurel customer, and then click on save. So I got the new project set up. There's no income, no cost associated to it, right? So if I actually create an invoice for that project, I'm going to click on the project here on the drop-down menu. I'll pick whatever item here. We're going to make this 10,000 to simplify it, and then click on save and close. I should immediately see $10,000 in income into the project. Now, to add expenses to here, I just have to create a check or a bill or anything like that. So I'll create a check here. Pick any random vendor, let's say this one, and select contractor, and let's make this one $5,000, and we'll select the attic project. So there you go. So I'm going to click on save and close, and it's that simple. That's how you do job costing. So in this report, you're going to get income and the cost. If I run a report and I go to reports and then I click on profit and loss, and then in here, I go to customize and I go to filters and I click on customer. And then here I click on the drop down menu and I look for that specific addict customer and click on run report. I'm going to get my profitability report in the reports menu by customer. So here shows me my income, my expenses by customer, which I can run through a report, or I can click on projects and I can see it right here in the project screen. Now to add the payroll expenses, it is crucial that you create a timesheet first. Without a timesheet, this doesn't work. So you have to create the timesheet first, no matter what. So we're going to go into the new transactions menu and click on weekly timesheet. And I'm going to select here for the week. I'm going to add some additional hours for this one employee. I'm going to add some additional hours for this project. So I'm going to click on the drop down menu here, select this new addict project. Under pay item, I'm going to click on regular pay. And then I'm going to assign this person maybe, let's pick a different week. Let me pick a different week here in the future here. So to make it a little bit simpler to use. So we're going to pick that week there and then go to regular pay. And let's say that this person worked 8 hours and 8 hours, Monday and Tuesday on this project. And the rest of the time worked in an entirely different project. So I'm using a timesheet to track how many hours is this employee spending per project via the timesheet. That's crucial. You have to use the timesheet system for this, right? So once I got the timesheet done, I click on save and close. Then I can create the paycheck. Now the timesheet itself doesn't generate any costs because payroll is turned on, and a timesheet it's considered to be a non-posting transaction. So in QuickBooks, you have to actually create the paycheck from the timesheet in order for it to be considered a posting transaction. And then once it's posting, it goes into the screen. Now, there's a little bit of caveat here, and I'll have a different part of the video where I'll explain this part, where if you don't have payroll turned on, this is going to be very, very different. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's finish this because we're working under the assumption that this QuickBooks file has payroll in fact. So let's go into workers, employees, and then I'm going to click here on run payroll. I'm going to go ahead and pick the week that I'm going to run payroll for that is related to that timesheet. So I'll pick the week here. Okay. And notice here's the total hours that crossed that week. Remember that not every week falls into every time period, but there was a few days related to that week where it landed based on this pay date. And then these 31 hours were automatically calculated based on the hours that the employee worked maybe the week before and then the week that we just entered just now. Long story short, there are some hours associated with this project in here. Unfortunately, I cannot change or edit. I don't have any capacity to play with any of these things and change the jobs that are related to this particular paycheck. This all comes from the timesheet. So you have to make sure that this timesheet information was entered correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and click on review payroll and submit the payroll and the paycheck. It's entered, whether it's direct deposit or a printed check, that doesn't matter. My payroll is created. I have an additional payroll created. I'm going to go back into projects here, and then I'm going to go into my new addict project, and you should see some additional money allocated to the cost. So it looks like it added $443 worth of payroll, and that's going to be $400 worth of wages and $43.80 worth of taxes. So those $400 must be the wages of the employee times the 16 hours that we entered. And really that's it. I mean, it works. It just works really, really well. At the end of the day, you want to look at the P&L report by project as well. So we'll go to reports and we'll go to profit and loss. And we're going to click on display columns by customers. And that should give me all the customers across the board. And I'm going to make this for the entire month and then click on run report. So I should be able to look at every one of my projects. Here's my new addict project. Notice that there's the $10,000 worth of income. There's my $5,000 of the contractor expense. And there's my payroll. So beautiful thing. It works really, really well. I'm extremely happy about this feature, which is brand new for the first quarter of 2019. And that should be a really big game changer for a lot of people using QuickBooks Online that weren't able to do that before. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a different company file altogether. And this other company file doesn't have payroll turned on. So let's assume that we're using maybe a outside payroll company or something like that. Maybe you're using ADP or Paychex. Bottom line, you're using payroll outside of QuickBooks, and you want to be able to job cost the timesheet information into the project. So the good news is that it would actually do that. Let me show you how it works. So I'm going to click on projects here, and we're going to see a couple of projects in here. I'm going to click on this one called Consulting for Kathy. I'm going to click on that. And then we're going to see the breakdown here. And we have our income of $1,000. And then we have hourly time cost. Notice it doesn't say expenses or payroll. It says hourly time cost. It's pretty interesting. And there's 854.36. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to show you where that came from. That came from these time entries. So if I click on any of these time entries, it's going to take me to individual time entries. Now, let me show you how that works. It does get a bit confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to go back into projects and I'll create a brand new project, right? So I'm going to click on new project. We're going to call this new basement. And we're going to make this a sub-customer of, or a project of Kathy Paulson. And then I click on save. So there it is, brand new project. Let's do the exact same thing we did on the other example. We'll create an invoice for $10,000. Let's pick any item here, make sure we have the correct project selected, and then we're going to do $10,000. Again, it needs to be a project, right? Not a customer, not a sub-customer. It needs to be specifically a project. So we're going to click on save and close. So now there's my sales for $10,000, no expenses. I'm going to come in here and add an expense, and I'll add an expense for a contractor. We'll do a similar situation as here. I'll make an expense for $5,000 and select the correct project. Make sure that project is selected. Click on save and close. There we go. So we're at the same exact position we were before, just like in the other example. So let me go to new transactions, and then let me click on weekly timesheet. And then I'm going to select an employee here, Hector Garcia, and I'm going to have him work on the new basement project for 8 hours, 8 hours, and 4 hours, so a total of 20 hours, okay, to one job. And then I'm going to have him work on a different project altogether for some additional hours, okay? So let's say this is the timesheet for Hector Garcia, a total of 28 hours. And notice here, it says cost. So it's got a calculated amount, $638.20. So if you were to use maybe the calculator and you were to divide 628.20 divided by 28 hours, you get the actual hourly cost. Now, where that comes from, I'll show you right now. I'm going to click on save and close. Where that comes from is when you are on this screen, we're going to go back to all projects here. I'm going to go back for a second. We're going to see a little button that says hourly cost rate. So that's right there. When you click on projects, on the home screen of projects, you're going to see hourly cost rate. We're going to click on that. And then we can click on any of the employees and click on the little pencil. So when I click on the little pencil, then I click on the calculator, and then it takes me to this screen. In this screen, I can say, look, Hector costs $25 an hour. Okay. So automatically this calculates the Social Security and Medicare. Then the additional FUTA and SUTA per hour, you're going to have to manually calculate this. Let's just make the assumption this is 15 cents, okay, per hour. And then let's say the workers' compensation, it's about $2.50 an hour. And there's some additional overhead like health insurance or whatever it happens to be of about, let's say $13 an hour. So this calculation you have to do internally. You have to figure out exactly what the payroll taxes and workers' comp and additional overhead cost per hour and break it down in here. This is an estimate regardless. This is not going to be an exact science, and this is not going to generate the paycheck itself. This is just to calculate the cost. So once I click on add, and then I click on save, and then I click on done, what that's going to do is it's going to now have a new baseline to calculate the expenses per hour. So when I click on my project and under cost, I'm going to see hourly time cost, Hector Garcia here. Every time I add additional hours to this job, you're going to see that new hourly rate being added in there. So for example, let's go back here for a second and let's double check what the hourly rate for Hector is. So it's $42.56. That's pretty clear there, right? So I'm going to open up the project we're working on here, and then I'm going to open a new screen, and I'm going to go into my timesheet, and I'm going to add a new line here, and let's say I'm going to add 1 hour. Okay, so I'm adding 1 hour, which is a cost of $42.56. So once I click Save and Close, I should see this dollar amount go up by $42. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save and Close. And there it is. That should have gone up by $42. So once I click on that, it will take me to a report with all the different time entries. Notice that before I changed the cost rate, it was using the old cost rate. And then when I enter the new hour under the new cost rate, there it is. Now, these are non-posting transactions. So if I actually go into project reports and I go to project profitability, it says without time cost. So when I click on that, there's no payroll information in here because this information resides only on the project screen and is only on displays for you to know more or less what your costs per project is, including payroll. But if you pull up a profit and loss by customer, for example, and I want to, let me do this by customer, and I want to know what my expenses are for the project, that's not going to be included. Notice that that's not included because timesheets are non-posting transactions. So on the first example I showed you, we actually had payroll in QuickBooks. And if you do have payroll in QuickBooks, that information will post into the financial statements and it will allocate per job properly. If you don't have payroll in QuickBooks and you have payroll in some other system, then this information will be converted to a cost based on the timesheet, but it won't be allocated on the financial statements. It will only be allocated on the project screen just for you to know the cost from this screen. So I hope that made sense. I'm going to strongly recommend you to join me on a webinar that I'm doing called QuickBooks Online Advanced Webinar for Job Costing. It's going to be a 2-hour sort of epic webinar where we're going to cover this really, really slowly, step by step. We'll cover all the job cost related issues with QuickBooks Online, all the reports, profitability reports we can run in QuickBooks Online. It's going to be a 2-hour webinar. It's going to be free for people that attend it live, and then you're going to have to pay to watch the recording. So I strongly recommend that you register for that webinar. I'll put the registration link below somewhere, and I'll see you on April 18th. Otherwise, if you're watching this video after April 18th, you can join my program and watch that recording afterwards. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video.